They told me I wasn't forgotten. That sentence echoed louder than the world around me. It should have brought comfort, relief, even, but instead, it felt like a lie wrapped in kindness. The kind of words people say to make you feel less invisible, less alone. But when you've been carrying a secret for so long, even kindness feels like a spotlight you want to escape from. I remember that day clearly. The sky was painted in soft shades of ash and blue, like it couldn't decide whether to rain or shine. I was standing alone near the old church fence, the one with chipped white paint and roses blooming wildly around it. People were gathering behind me, calling my name, hugging me, smiling like I belonged. "You haven't been forgotten," they kept saying. But none of them knew. Not really. They didn't know the version of me they missed wasn't the one standing there. I was a puzzle with missing pieces and cracked edges, pretending to fit into a picture that had long changed. They didn't know about the guilt I carried, the secret that kept me awake for nights on end. I had rehearsed my smiles like monologues in front of a mirror, hoping no one would see the shaking hands beneath the sleeves. Have you ever had a secret so heavy it bent your back even while you stood straight? So personal, so tightly stitched into the fabric of your being, that even whispering it might cause everything to unravel? They told me I was remembered. But how can you truly remember someone if you never really knew who they were to begin with? There's something haunting about being seen but not known. About being told you matter, when the version of you they hold in their memory is frozen in time, untouched by the mistakes you've made, the pain you've buried, the choices you've hidden. I wanted to scream, to tell them, "You don't miss me. You miss the version of me I no longer am." But instead, I nodded. I smiled. I let them believe. Because the truth? It wasn't something they were ready to hear. I wasn't even sure if I was ready to say it. They saw someone strong. Someone who had disappeared for a while but had returned. Whole. Healed. But that was the illusion I needed them to believe. Because behind my steady eyes and calm voice lived the shadow of a moment I had never told anyone about. A moment that changed everything and no one knew. That's the thing about secrets. They're not just stories we hide. They're parts of ourselves we're afraid won't be accepted once revealed. I had walked through fire, and I had come out scarred, not shining. But scars are easier to hide than open wounds. And I was determined to keep this one hidden. So, I played along. I hugged them back. I thanked them for remembering. I even laughed when someone brought up a childhood story, one that used to bring joy. But my heart stayed quiet. It didn't join the celebration. Because deep down, it feared the day they would find out the truth. And even deeper, it feared what would happen if I never let it out. The secret wasn't a crime, but it felt like one. It wasn't betrayal, but it broke something inside me. And even though no one blamed me because no one knew, I had already judged myself in silence, again and again. There's a certain loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who love the version of you that no longer exists. It's like being a ghost at your own funeral, watching people mourn while you stand there, unseen. I kept telling myself, one day, maybe. One day I'll tell them. One day they'll know. But when? And how? What words could ever capture the truth that had lived so long in the dark? For now, I kept it locked away. Behind eyes that learned to smile. Behind lips that knew how to deflect. Behind memories that felt more like fiction than fact. They told me I wasn't forgotten. I whispered again to myself that night, lying awake, staring at the ceiling. But if they knew the truth, would they still remember me the same way? Because I had a secret they didn't know. And it was only a matter of time. I wasn't always this quiet, this guarded, this unsure of where I stood in the world. There was a time when I filled every room I entered with laughter. A time when my dreams spilled from my mouth faster than my thoughts could keep up. People used to call me the firecracker, full of energy, light, and sparks. But that feels like someone I once knew, not someone I ever was. My name is Ariba. And before the silence, before the secret, before everything changed, I lived a life filled with moments that seemed ordinary. School days, loud dinners, endless jokes shared with cousins, family traditions that made us feel like nothing outside our walls could harm us. I grew up in a house where love was loud. My mother was a storyteller. She had this way of making the most mundane day sound like a legend. And my father, he was steady, a man of few words, but when I grew up in a house where love was loud. My mother was a storyteller. She had this way of making the most mundane day sound like a legend. And my father, he was steady, a man of few words, but when he spoke, it echoed. I was their only daughter, and the way they looked at me made me believe I could do anything. Maybe that's why the fall hurt so much later. When I disappointed them, not with words, but with silence. I had a younger brother, Saad. He was my shadow. Everywhere I went, he followed. We had our fights, sure, like all siblings do. But there was a bond between us, unspoken but real. The kind where you could sit in silence and still feel like you're having a conversation. He knew how to read me, even when I didn't say a word. Or maybe I just thought he did. Then there was Hiba, my best friend since 5th grade. We had met in the school library while reaching for the same book. We both insisted on taking it and then ended up reading it together instead. That became our thing. Sharing stories. Telling truths. Or so I believed. But here's the thing about people who know you well. When you start to change, they notice. Even if you try to hide it. They sense the shifts in your voice, the weight in your pauses, the way your laughter grows shorter, and your hugs grow colder. And slowly, they either push harder to stay close, or step away, unsure of how to help. That's what happened with Hiba. She saw the change before anyone else did. She asked me what was wrong. At first, I told her I was just tired. Then I said I was busy. Then I stopped answering her calls altogether. She tried. God knows she tried. But I had already started building walls. One brick at a time. I think I started changing the night that secret was born. And no, it wasn't something anyone did to me. It was something I did or didn't do depending on how you look at it. A decision I made in a moment of fear, one I never took back, one I buried. The problem with secrets is they don't stay quiet forever. They become a lens through which you view the world. Every word someone says, you question. Every compliment feels like a lie. Every hug feels like guilt in disguise. And yet, from the outside, my life looked untouched. I finished university, got a decent job at a design firm. I kept smiling at weddings, laughing at birthdays, posting pictures that said, "Look, I'm fine." But I wasn't. Every night, I'd lie awake, reliving a moment I never dared to speak about. I'd ask myself if I made the right choice. I'd imagine scenarios where I could go back and do it differently. But the past is a locked door, and I had already thrown away the key. My parents didn't know. They still looked at me with proud eyes. My brother still cracked jokes to make me smile. And Hiba, well, she eventually gave up. Stopped texting. Stopped asking. People move on, after all. Especially when you don't let them in. The irony? I spent my whole life believing that if you truly loved someone, you would tell them everything. That love meant truth. But now I wonder, was I protecting them by keeping it in, or protecting myself from what they'd say if they knew? That question haunted me. It shaped who I became, someone who wore her past like perfume, strong enough to sense, but not visible to the eye. So when I returned to the city after years away, after pretending everything was normal, I wasn't surprised by the smiles, the "you haven't changed at all" comments, the warm welcomes. What surprised me was how easily I slipped back into the old roles. As if the broken version of me had been temporarily shelved for a reunion performance. But I knew better. Behind every "I missed you," I heard the words unspoken, "I don't really know you anymore." And they didn't. Because they couldn't. Not until I was ready to open that door. Not until I was ready to stop being the version of me they remembered and start being the version that I had fought to become, scars and all. It started with a text message. I was sitting at my desk, scrolling through some emails, when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was just a notification from one of my work groups, but when I saw the name on the screen, my heart stopped. Hiba. I hadn't heard from her in months. Not since that night we had the argument. The one where I let silence speak louder than my own voice. The one where I walked away instead of explaining everything. I knew she had been hurt. But I wasn't ready to face it. I wasn't ready to let anyone see me as weak, as fragile. And maybe, deep down, I feared what she'd think if she found out the truth. The message was simple. We need to talk. And in that one sentence, everything I had buried, everything I had hidden for so long, came rushing to the surface. The walls I'd built around my past started to tremble, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to lose my footing. I hadn't planned for this moment. I hadn't planned on her coming back, not like this. But there she was, demanding a conversation, demanding answers. I thought I could keep moving through life as if nothing had happened, but this was my reckoning. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing. What if I told her? What if I let her in? Could she ever forgive me? Could I forgive myself? I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to face her. I had to confront the secret I had held so tightly for so long. And in doing so, I had to face everything I had run from. The guilt, the shame, the fear. I arranged to meet her at a cafe. The same place we had sat countless times, laughing over cups of coffee and sharing our hopes for the future. A place where we once felt invincible, as though nothing could break our bond. When I arrived, Hiba was already there, sitting at our usual corner table. She looked the same, but different. There was a quiet intensity in her eyes now, something I hadn't seen before. Maybe it was because of what she had learned. Maybe it was because of what I hadn't told her. She didn't greet me with a hug. She didn't offer a smile. She simply looked up as I approached and nodded toward the chair across from her. "Hi," I said, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. I sat down, trying to keep my hands from trembling. Hiba stared at me for a long moment before speaking. "You've changed, Ariba." Her words hit harder than I expected. I could feel the weight of them, and I knew she wasn't just talking about my appearance.
She was talking about me.
The way I had shut myself off, the way I had closed myself in. "I know," I said, trying to steady my breath. "I've been distant." Hiba nodded, but there was no warmth in her eyes. Only the quiet, simmering anger that had built up over time. She folded her hands on the table, looking down at them for a moment before meeting my gaze. "You know, for months, I've been asking myself why you pulled away. I thought it was something I did. But now, I'm starting to think it wasn't about me at all, was it?" I could feel the blood rush to my face. She was right. It wasn't about her. It was about me. About the secret I had kept hidden. The thing that had poisoned everything we used to be. The thing I had never dared to speak aloud. "No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't about you. It was about me. And something I've been running from." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she studied me, her eyes searching my face, as if she were trying to decipher the truth that had been buried for so long. "You've been running from something?" she finally asked, her voice low, almost like she was afraid of the answer. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Yes." She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "What is it, Ariba? What are you so afraid of?" I closed my eyes, trying to find the strength to say the words that had never been spoken aloud. But no matter how many times I rehearsed the story in my head, no matter how many times I imagined the words coming out of my mouth, I couldn't bring myself to say them.
"Not yet."
Hiba's expression softened, but there was still a hardness to her gaze. "You know, I thought we were always honest with each other. I thought you'd never hide something from me." "I didn't mean to," I whispered, the words feeling like shards of glass as they left my mouth. "I didn't want to hurt you. You did hurt me, Ariba. You hurt me by disappearing, by not telling me the truth. And now, I don't know who you are anymore." Her words stung, but they weren't unexpected. She was right. I had let her down. I had let myself down. The truth hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating, and I could feel the walls around my heart start to crumble. I knew I couldn't keep running. Not from her, not from myself. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "I should have told you. I should have been honest from the start." She didn't say anything, but I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She was trying to piece together the fragments of who I had been and who I was now. and I could see that she wasn't sure if the person in front of her was someone she could trust anymore. I knew this conversation was only the beginning. There was so much more to unravel, so much more to explain. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally ready to tell her the truth, even if it meant facing the consequences. But just as I was about to speak again, the door to the cafe swung open, and someone else walked in, someone who had been a part of this story, someone whose presence I hadn't expected to see. And suddenly, everything I had worked to bury threatened to resurface all at once. I froze as the door to the cafe swung open, the familiar chime echoing in the stillness. I didn't even have to look up to know who it was. My heart raced as I recognized the silhouette standing in the doorway, tall, confident, and undeniably familiar. It was Zaid, the last person I ever expected to walk in here. Hiba's eyes widened slightly as she turned to look at him, but she said nothing. Neither of us moved, and for a brief moment, the world outside that cafe seemed to fall away. It was as if time itself had paused, holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Zaid didn't look at either of us directly. He just made his way toward the counter, ordering a coffee in a tone that was too calm, too controlled. But I knew better. He was anything but calm. I could feel Hiba's eyes burning into me, her silence demanding answers. I knew she had no idea how Zaid had anything to do with this, with us. But the weight of his presence hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating every word that I was about to speak. I had to do this. I had to explain everything. Taking a deep breath, I turned to Hiba. She was still staring at Zaid, trying to make sense of the strange, unspoken connection between the two of us. Her expression was unreadable, but I knew she was waiting for me to speak. The truth. The one truth that had been eating away at me for so long. Hiba, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. There's something I've never told you. Something that I've kept hidden for a long time. She didn't respond. She just looked at me, her eyes soft but full of expectation. It was as if she already knew what was coming, or at least that something was wrong. Zaid and I, we have a history.
A past.
Before all of this, I gestured between the two of us. Before you and me, before everything that happened between us, there was him. Hiba's eyebrows furrowed, confusion spreading across her face. What are you talking about? You never mentioned him before. I hesitated. How could I explain something so complicated, something so intertwined with my own guilt and shame? How could I make her understand that I had kept Zaid's presence in my life a secret, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I was terrified of what it would mean if she ever found out? Zaid, meanwhile, had taken a seat at a nearby table, his eyes scanning the room, though his gaze occasionally flicked in our direction. He was playing it cool, but I could see the tension in his posture. He wasn't here by accident. This is going to sound complicated, I said, my voice trembling. But before you and I met, before we became close, Zaid and I had a thing. A real thing. It was complicated and messy, and it ended badly. I walked away from him because I thought it was the right thing to do. But the truth is, I wasn't really running away from him. I was running away from myself. Hiba's expression softened for a moment, but I could see her processing what I had said. Wait, so you were with him before we even? Yes, I replied quickly. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't what it seemed. We weren't in a traditional relationship. It was something more dangerous, more hidden, something I could never tell anyone about.
Not even you.
I watched as Hiba's eyes shifted from confusion to disbelief. But why? Why keep it from me, Hariba? Why keep something so important to yourself? The weight of her question hit me like a punch to the stomach. How could I answer her? How could I explain the depths of my fear, my shame? How could I explain that the secret I had been carrying wasn't just about protecting her, but also about protecting myself from something I wasn't ready to face? I was afraid, I whispered. Afraid of what it would mean if I told you.
Afraid of what it would mean about me.
About everything I thought I knew about myself. Hiba shook her head slowly. But you could have trusted me. We could have figured this out together. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I fought to keep them at bay. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to make you see that I was broken, that I was already damaged long before we ever met. The air between us grew heavier, and the silence seemed to stretch for a lifetime. I was terrified that this was it, that everything we had built was crumbling before my eyes. But then, in a move that completely caught me off guard, Hiba reached across the table and took my hand. I get it, she said softly. I really do. We all have our pasts. And sometimes, we're scared of what the truth will do to us. But hiding from it, hiding from the people we care about, it only makes things worse. Her words were a balm to the rawness I had been feeling, but the moment wasn't over. The most difficult part was yet to come. I turned to look at Zaid, who was still sitting at his table, his eyes now fixed on us. It was as though he was waiting for something. For permission, perhaps. Or maybe for a confrontation that had been a long time coming. I know he's been a part of this, Hiba, I said, my voice shaking. I know you didn't know, but Zaid, he's been following me, watching me, and he's the reason I pushed you away. She looked at me with wide eyes.
What?
Why would he do that? What does he want from you? I swallowed hard. He wants something. He's been trying to make me face the truth for months. But I couldn't. I couldn't face it, not even for myself. A beat of silence passed, and then Zaid stood up. He walked toward us slowly, deliberately, his gaze never leaving mine. Hiba looked from me to him, her confusion deepening. Who is he, Ariba? Why is he here? Zaid stopped in front of our table, his gaze softening slightly. I'm the man she ran from, he said simply, his voice low but calm. And I'm the one who's been keeping the truth from both of you. I felt a chill run down my spine as his words hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. What truth? Hiba demanded, her voice sharp. What are you talking about? Zaid glanced at me briefly before turning to her. The truth that Ariba and I were part of something much darker, much more complicated than she ever let on. The truth that I'm the reason she pushed you away. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, but they were too many. Too much to comprehend in one moment. And then, as I finally understood what he meant, the weight of everything I had buried for so long crashed down on me. The truth wasn't just about us. It was about my fears, about my deepest insecurities, about the people who had manipulated me, the choices I had made, and the trust one had broken. And now, finally, after all this time, it was all coming to light. The silence in the cafe felt deafening. My heart pounded in my chest as Zaid's words lingered in the air, like the calm before a storm. But for the first time in ages, I felt a sense of relief. The weight of my secrets had been laid bare. The truth, no matter how painful, was finally out. Hiba was still processing everything, her mind trying to piece together the shattered fragments of our lives. But I could see it in her eyes. I could see the forgiveness forming, slowly but surely, just as I had hoped. I can't change the past, I said softly, my voice trembling. But I can promise you one thing. I'm here now, and I'm not running away anymore. Hiba's gaze softened, a silent understanding passing between us. There was still so much to heal, so much to rebuild, but this moment, this fragile, delicate moment, felt like the beginning of something new. Something real. As for Zaid, he turned to leave, his face unreadable. There were no more words between us. No more unfinished business. We had said what needed to be said. And now I was free. But freedom comes with its own burdens, doesn't it? It comes with the responsibility to make things right, to face the consequences of the past, even when they weigh heavy on your soul. It means walking through the pain, embracing the unknown, and stepping into the light even when it's blinding. So, I ask you, dear listener, what will you do when the truth finally catches up with you? Will you run from it, or will you stand tall, face it head on, and make peace with the choices you've made? The truth is a powerful force. It has the ability to shatter, to destroy, but also to heal and rebuild. And sometimes, the hardest part is not just revealing the truth, it's learning to live with it. As for me, I don't know what the future holds. But I do know this. I'm no longer afraid of the truth. I've faced it, embraced it, and now I can move forward. The question is, can you?